Good afternoon. And I just kick off, just explain about Kirklees. Sometimes I get asked, where in Scotland is Kirklees? And it's the bit that contains Huddersfield, Dewsbury and Cleckheaton in West Yorkshire. So that's where we are. I've worked in the energy sector, housing energy sector now for about 18 years, and been involved in it for that time. And as an officer, every now and again I'd have a few ideas, and I'd take them to my senior managers, and they'd go, "Nice idea, Andrew. Go back to work." That was all quite interesting. Then in 1999. After failing to find anybody to stand for election for the Newsham ward for the Green Party, I had to stand, and all of a sudden I became a councillor. And so then I went through the stage of saying to officers, "I've got this idea," and they go, "Yes, that's really interesting." And you know, I'd get the equivalent of a pat on the head, and that was pretty good. Then things started to change a bit in 2000. The Labour Party lost control of the council. They had 2 votes. They were 2 votes short of getting their budget through, and we had 3 votes. And you know, my maths is pretty good. And so at that stage, from thence onwards, right the way through to today, Kirklees has been a minority administration, with some parties coming together to work together. And some working on their own as a minority administration, but requiring the support of others. And so it's been an interesting time, and it's been useful for us, and we've worked well with some of the other parties in Kirklees. So that's a bit of background. So what about the benefits of the challenge of looking at carbon emissions, taking those things on, and particularly microgeneration and renewable energy? Well, one of the characteristics of renewable technologies is their longevity. You look at things like solar panels, you look at heat pumps, even some of the biomass kit out there, and it's got a very long lifetime compared with some of the alternatives that are out there. And so it's very good for whole life cost approaches, where you look at the capital cost but the revenue benefit over a long time. And so that's particularly good for local authorities who are looking at that sort of approach. For Kirklees, we traded a heck of a lot on our environmental record. About 2 years ago, we were named Council of the Year. And I remember when the people were coming to judge Kirklees, that we talked about Kirklees Warm Zone and some of the renewables projects we've done, and we traded quite heavily on that. And quite often, it's the best investment option. It's the thing you should do. It's the right thing to do. It's not you're doing it because you love the planet or love the earth or all those sort of things. It's just the best thing to do, and in money terms. Carbon reduction, of course, a no-brainer. Only people with no brains believe that carbon emissions don't need to be reduced, that there is no issue with global warming. The feed-in tariff, the renewable heat incentive, you've heard plenty of that today. And of course, addressing fuel poverty. And I think we've got to watch out for those people who are trying to redefine fuel poverty. Kirklees Council, the story so far. We established a renewable energy fund in 2000. And this was the first budget we were involved in. And what happened at that time, it's 10 years ago now, crikey. What happened at that time was that national insurance rates were reduced by the government at that time, at the same time as they put the climate change levy on fuel bills. So we simply asked a question of the council's treasurer and said, what does this mean for Kirklees Council as a large employer? And he turned around and said, I think it was about £200,000 better off a year. And we said, well, don't lose that in the council's budget process. Don't let it go. That's become the Renewable Energy Fund. And we will use that renewable energy fund from there on in to draw in more money. And we've drawn in millions. I think last time we looked at about £4 million of external funding, which has been drawn in by that money that we identified and didn't lose at that time. Because 10 years ago, things were a lot different now. And as a result of that, the projects that we've done, a few years ago, we worked out that 5% of the UK's solar electricity is generated in sunny Huddersfield. Which is the solar capital of the UK. And other things we've done is we did our own version of the building regulations. We said, actually, where we're building a project, where we're involved, 30% of the energy in that building should come from renewable sources, a minimum of. So we didn't wait for the code for sustainable this, that, or the other. We decided that that's what we were going to do on projects that we had procured and to move things on. Also, I'm going to talk about the revolutionary recharge scheme, and I'll get onto that a wee bit later. Kirklees Warm Zone. This has been a highly hyped but highly recognised project that we've done, which is insulation. The offer of free insulation to all householders in Kirklees, irrespective of age, tenure. We generally say the qualification criteria for getting free cavity wall loft insulation in Kirklees is to live and breathe, and on that basis you get it. The background to this is there have been a number of free schemes over the years. There was initially the Calderdale Health Energy Action project in 1999, where all people over 60 were offered free insulation. Then there was a small project in the ward I represented where we had some neighbourhood renewal money, and we offered it free insulation to the over 60s in the ward I represented. I became cabinet member for housing in about 2003, and we then did a project to give all people over 60 in the whole of Kirklees free insulation. And then in 2006, the Liberal Democrats proposed a warm zone, the Kirklees warm zone. But I'd seen warm zones around the country that have been done. It's not the only one. There's a number of them that you may have heard of. But they were always sort of limited by the amount of people saying, well, I can't afford 90 quid. I can't afford 150 quid for this insulation. And so you tended to find that free schemes, well, we found out since, that free schemes will give you 3 times the amount of insulation measures than these smaller schemes where we only got a few. And so we decided to make it free, and it reduced the barriers to take up enormously. And we had 61,000 insulation measures, and we're the largest insulation schemes in the UK between 2008 and 2010. So that amendment really did make a difference, and I don't think it's been surpassed by any authority since. We want it to be. Leeds hopefully next. So there we go. It's a £21 million scheme. Half of the money came from Scottish Power. And there's some of the latest figures. 20,804 households receiving free cavity wall, 42,130 getting free loft insulation. And we reckon that £4.5 million is going back into the local economy each year. When I get up in council and talk about this, I don't talk about the environment, I don't talk about carbon emissions. I say that this project was the biggest economic regeneration project this council has ever done. And I keep wanting somebody to contradict me, but they never do. And it is. And you know, that money, the value of that money will rise as energy prices rise because of the savings. So it really is truly a great project. And over 100 new jobs created and sustained. And the reason that it's important in terms of renewables and relevant to what we're talking about here today is because we've got a 20% renewables target. And of course, a percentage renewables target will be a heck of a lot easier to achieve if we reduce the amount of energy that we've got to use in the first place. And that's why these sort of projects, these conservation projects, have got to be seen hand in hand with microgeneration. So there we go. That explains the Renewable Energy Fund, which I've explained already. I'm now going to talk about some of the projects from the Renewable Energy Fund. When I was Cabinet Member for Housing, this housing association came up to me and said, Councillor Cooper, you're a Green. I said, yes, I am. And they said, well, you'll be really pleased to know we want to build some houses in the ward that you represent, and we want to make them Eco Homes Good standard. And I said, well, that's great, thank you. But isn't that the Housing Corporation's minimum standard? I think it was at the time. And they went, oh, yes. So I said, well, actually, I'd like an Eco Homes Excellent properties, and I'd like solar panels involved in this, and I would like a lot of renewable technology. And they said, oh, yes, okay then. And so we went on and had that. We had 121 houses and flats using solar PV and solar thermal. And remember, this is about 6 or 7 years ago for this project. So using both solar technologies, same power source. So we had new build Eco Homes Excellent properties, and we also we don't want to land like a spaceship on this estate, so we did the council houses around it.